Hello, Dave and Tim here for the single malt review. Today it's independent bottling territory, single cask in a sense. Tim, fill us in.
Yes, indeed. It's been single casks have been kind of the theme for this raft of episodes, and this one is no different. It is a Cadenheads single cask, and it's a Bunnahabhain, 16 years old, 49.7%. So a bit of a leaker, coming down under 50% for only 16 years, but that's not a problem. It usually means it's going to be quite a interesting whisky with that much atmospheric communication.
But what is interesting is that it's single cask, yet involved two casks.
Yes,
somehow.
this one, we only just caught this just before we started. This one's been on a bit of a journey. This one distilled 1999, bottled 2016, but then down here you see cask matured in a sherry hogshead since December 2013. So this is what you call a re-racked. This has been tipped out of one cask, which I can only assume is a bourbon hogshead, because the sizes would match up, and tipped into a sherry hogshead. So that's interesting. It sort of had a very, very long finish. I think at 3 years, which it is effectively, that's when you can start calling things dual maturation. I mean, it doesn't stop a lot of companies calling things dual maturation when it's been in, say, something for, 6 months. A lot of so-called double woods things have been really what should have been called finished when they've trying to imply that they've been matured properly. This one certainly has had a significant amount of time in that sherry wood.
Yeah.
How new that was, we really don't know.
It's still a little. I feel it's a little bit of a stretch to still call it single cask, but it's still the exact same, batch of whiskey, really.
I suppose,
one barrel than another.
It makes you think about what a single cask is, whether it's the cask you're talking about or the whiskey. In this case, it certainly isn't the cask, because that cask is long since gone to pasture, or has more whiskey in it these days. Who knows? It's the filling, it's the contents, which has maintained its provenance in this case. But whatever has gone on, and whatever we might think about it, as I think you will discover, it has not harmed the whiskey in any way. This is one of the better single casks I've tried probably this year, and I will attempt to articulate how.
It's a good whiskey time capsule as well, distilled in 99, tail end of the last century, and bottled within the last 12 months or so in 2016.
Tail end of the last millennium, you could say. Now, the first hint I get off here is that I did not adequately rinse my glass out from the previous tastings Le Chic, but it's all right, because I've done nothing if not nose this one for the last few weeks. Because this is an un-peated whiskey, we should not be detecting any peat here. Yeah, the fact that I am is more indicative of my lack of.
Do you want to get a fresh glass?
Lack of glass rinsing. No, it's all right. I already know sort of what this one's supposed to smell like.
I did thoroughly rinse my glass, and I'm getting a lot of. That's curious. I'm getting a lot of dark rum notes off that. It is a rich, sweet, heavy molasses, sort of a prickly. Bit of a rummy, fruity compost.
Is it conceivably because you just recently had your nose in the rum bottle?
I did nose your rum
around?
bottle, but I don't believe it's that. No, it's. I had a nosing of this bottle afterward, and was surprised at the comparison.
No, this one. It's quite a juicy nose, and it's very, very inviting. And there's almost no prickle because it's come down so much. Whatever was happening with this one, the go-through for the whiskey to air in this barrel was very, very high. Maybe they spilt some when they were transferring it between the casks. Who knows? But this has gotten really, really low for 16. Normally for a 16-year-old whiskey, you would expect things to be, I don't know, at least still 53, 55 almost. To have one at 49, something's going on there. That barrel is really, really communicating. Maybe that's why they transferred it in the first place. They put the hydrometer in there, and they thought, oh shit, this is going to be under 40% in another 5 years. We've got to do something.
So change it to another cask to
who knows?
New carry also to preserve its shelf life.
Who knows what its story might have been? But
interesting to know, but we don't tell you. We can only speculate.
Yeah, but it's it's quite a bourbon matured nose. The fruitiness, I think, comes from the sherry, but the wonderful sort of creamy vanilla that I can only assume comes from the sherry.
There is a certain
rather than bourbon.
beeswax there too, and a little bit of the leather tobacco pouch, I believe it's called. A bit of pipe tobacco and some sort of nice oiled waxy leather.
And there's not quite so much prickle as a warmth, and it's quite a peppery warmth. And now that I stare at the back of the bottle, it does suggest that there might be some black pepper in there. To me, it's maybe even more of a white pepper. That's sort of splitting hairs, peppery hairs at that point. But never mind, it is certainly somewhat obvious.
Ooh, wow.
And it is strong, but not overpowering at full strength, and really, really quite unctuously sweet.
Yes.
And juicy.
There's a juicy sweetness there. There is maybe some prunes, dates, but also, curiously, a bit like that first sort of bite into a rather fresh, unlit cigar. Not an experience I've had often, but it's something I kind of remember, and it's very similar to that.
There is
a bit of a fresh cigar.
There's some tobacco, there's some cocoa, there's warming spices rather than particularly aromatic ones. There's nutmeg, which I've been sort of on a nutmeg thing today. I've been smelling it and tasting it and a great many things, but I do think it's here in this case.
See what you mean? Yeah, I'm getting
there's next to no peat, but there is a slight maritime quality that you get from Bunnahabhain.
That's something I always liked about Bunnahabhain, is there a chance to try an Islay whiskey without the characteristic Islay peat blanketing everything.
It's more of a savoury, salty edge that takes the sweet and just cows it down a little bit. It stops things that would otherwise get too sweet. It stops anything from becoming sickly. It turns what would be caramel into salted caramel. It turns it into something far, far more sort of digestible by the palate, I think. And it does a great deal in this whiskey, because this is right on the edge of being a little bit too sweet. There's huge quantities of sweet flavours here.
A little bit of it, you mentioning salt, made me think of Dutch salted licorice, and that is one of the more unique flavours I'm getting from this one too.
It's sweet and tangy. I think it's almost a little bit confusing, but that's because it's a vector between two different casks. Assuming it was, and I am going to assume it was, matured in a bourbon hogshead before it found its way into a sherry hogshead. I mean, unless it was a sherry butt, and they split it into multiple sherry hogsheads afterwards, which sounds like... That just sounds like a really weird thing to do. I'm certain it was bourbon hogshead before it found its way in here. It's those mature bourbon flavours on top of or underneath of mature sherry flavours, which makes it really, really odd to taste. We're certainly used to tasting finishes here. I'm used to tasting and complaining about subsequently sherry finishes, because you have this lovely mature bourbon whiskey, and then you have this sort of painted on veneer, as I often call it, this sort of sherry varnish on top. And it never tastes quite complete. This one is very, very different in that the bourbon flavours are fully mature, but within those 3 whole years in the sherry cask, the sherry flavours are quite mature and complete as well, which makes for a quite a compelling but quite a difficult to nail down whiskey. It's difficult to even really grasp this as a Bunnahabhain whiskey. Bunnahabhain usually has quite a tell. It's quite maritime, quite salty, but very, very not very peated at all, unless it's their particularly peated version. I'm not sure what they call it, totich or something. But anyway, this one, it bears all those hallmarks of Bunnahabhain, but there's just so much else going on at the same time that it's very, very difficult to pick. I'll put a wee bit of water in, but I'd recommend only putting just a drop.
Yeah,
you don't want to put in too many.
Smidge.
It's really, I think it's probably best at full strength, because then some of the oiliness remains, but it can take a few drops, certainly.
That's brought out some savoury and spicy notes. I'm getting hints of, say, a lightly peppered pale gravy, even. It's one of the more unusual aromas I've ever got from a whiskey, but...
Good grief, gravy.
Gravy, sort of like a white peppered gravy, sort of thing you have with pork or chicken, maybe.
There's certainly a savoury savoury element. There's apples and pears now that I put water in there. There's almost a Speyside direction manifesting in here. But what I really want to get across is the concentration of flavour in here. Everything that it tastes of, it really, really tastes of. Just the concentration of flavour is phenomenal. There is just so much going on.
That addition of water has quite significantly altered the flavour for me. All those other characters are still there, but now it's dominated by what I can only compare to probably lemon curd or key lime pie. Sharply citrus, still quite sweet, but smooth and creamy as well.
Yeah, this one, you could sort of go on describing it for ages because there is so many competing flavours in there, and it's so unusual in that they're all so strong, they're all so loud, there's so much concentration everywhere, there's no one real demarcation of what this thing tastes like, so it makes it kind of difficult to describe in a short video, but believe me when I say that this is really, really quite uniquely scrumptious. This is one of my favourite whiskies that has cropped up in quite a while, certainly this year. I've been really, really enjoying it. I think it's probably gone now, or I would snap up another bottle because it's pretty reasonably priced as single cask whiskey goes. Scores-wise, I'm going to give this one a 93. This is really, really excellent, I think. What's your take on it?
A little lower. It rates an 87 from me. There's a lot going on, but it's a little too chaotic for me. When I'm going for what is ostensibly a single cask whiskey, I like there to be a more harmonious range of flavours, where it's more an agreement. Here I've had everything from like lime pie to gravy, and that's an odd mixture of...
It's certainly a case of everything at once.
All over the spectrum,
But I am very much a more is more whiskey drinker, so it's makes sense that it communicates stronger with me. But yeah, no, this one, stunning example of both the single cask and of what Bunnahabhain, an Islay whiskey, can really produce with no peat involved.
And Bunnahabhain do produce some truly exceptional single casks. I think probably the first, if I remember right, the very first 40-year-old whiskey I ever had was a 40-year-old single cask Bunnahabhain.
Bunnahabhain, for whatever reason, is very, very generous with its cask library, or rather maybe it was at one time, because independent bottlers cannot stop releasing Bunnahabhain casks. There just always seems to be, even if there's nothing else, there is going to be a single cask Bunnahabhain somewhere on the shelf. It just seems to be hugely in circulation, and I think that's tremendous because it means for a whiskey with a fairly slim normal stable, it has the 12, it has the 18, both of which are perfectly excellent, and encompass quite a few different facets of Bunnahabhain, and of course it has its peated versions as well. The prevalence of the single casks means you can really, really taste all four corners of what that distillery can produce. I think it's really, really good stuff from them. But at any rate, hopefully that was good stuff from us. We will have some other stuff in the pipeline. I can see the table burgeons with options. We'll just have to pick one and bring it to you. But for the meantime, keep safe. This has been the Single Malt Review. Sludger.